Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 5 of the Virtual Island Summit. Can you believe it that it's been a week already? Feels like yesterday when we started the week. We have had such amazing sessions throughout the week. So we want to thank all of our speakers and moderators so far. But we still have a couple of sessions left. It's this session, and then we have a solution showcase, so don't miss that one as well. Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Christian Zacchino. I am the Director of Operations at Island Innovation. I am from Margarita Island in the Caribbean, but I'm currently based in the beautiful coastal city of Vigo in Galicia, northwest Spain. I'm pleased to be here presenting this session. For those of you who don't know us or may not remind a little bit about us, Island Innovation is a sustainable development consultancy primarily focusing on islands. Our services include events, strategic communications, and capacity building. We are trusted by clients around the globe, and if you're interested in learning more about our work, please reach out to us using the contact information available in the chat, or just go to our website, islandinnovation.co. Before we begin, you should see a poll appear in your screen right about now. So please answer the following questions because we want to get to know you better. What region you're connecting from, what sector you belong to, and what industry you belong to. While you vote on the results, let's speak a bit about this session, which is titled Harvesting Resilience, Strengthening Agriculture and Trade for Food Security. This session, we are proud to have the World Food Program of the UN co-organizing this session with Island Innovation. Caribbean food security is challenged by limited land and freshwater resources. Food security is challenged by limited land and freshwater resources, rising demand and dependence on imports, further strained by tourism and shifting diets. Strengthening resilience requires a multisectoral regional approach to boost local production, enhance intra-regional trade, and build robust supply chains. This panel will discuss progress, gaps, and opportunities for advancing food security and resilient food systems across the Caribbean. Let's take a look at the chat because we have people from all over the world, from the UK, from Spain, from Scotland, from Tonga, hello, from the Netherlands, from Portugal, from the US, from Jersey, from Guernsey, from Trinidad and Tobago, from the Seychelles. Thank you so much for participating on today's session. Let's take a look at the results of the poll that should be appearing right about now. So we have a lot of people from different regions, and the Caribbean sits at top with 26%, but we also have a lot of people from North America, 21%, the European continent with 21%, Africa 16%, Asia 11%, the Pacific 7%. Thank you so much. Regarding sector, most people here in the room belong to the academia sector with 37%. Then we have NGOs with 26%, the government with 16%, other sectors 16%, and private 5%. And about the industry, so we have a large variety of industries here. We have people from the environmental services or ocean conservation, 21%, energy 5%, management consultant 5%, agriculture 1%, events management 5%, politics and government 16%, tourism 5%, and other industries 42%. Thank you for your participation. I invite you to please make use of the chat function to introduce yourself and let us know where you're joining from. You can make any comments during the session. However, if you have any questions for our esteemed panelists, please make sure that you use the Q&A box and add the questions there. We will do our best to make sure that we can address as many as possible upon the Q&A part of the session. Now, I invite our moderator for today's session, Alex Chigobera, Program Policy Officer of the World Food Program in the Caribbean Multi-Country Office, to take the floor. Alex?
Thank you, Christian. Good day, everyone. And Christian has already given the welcome remarks for this session being held on the last day of this year's Virtual Island Summit. My name is Alex Chiguera. I'm a Program Policy Officer with the World Food Program Caribbean Multi-Country Office based in Bridgetown, and I'll be your moderator for this session. And just a brief background, the United Nations World Food Programme is the world's largest humanitarian organization with a mandate to address hunger and promote food security. WFP provides life-saving food assistance to millions of people affected by conflicts, disasters, and other emergencies, while also working on long-term development programs that help communities build resilience and achieve food security. The WFP Caribbean Multi-Country Office works with governments and various stakeholders across the Caribbean islands to promote food security through generating data to inform evidence-based policy actions, supply chain optimization, social protection, disaster risk financing, and climate resilience programming. The agency, in its capacity as a convener, has organized this panel session for the summit with food system stakeholders to discuss progress, current gaps, and opportunities for strengthening food systems in the Caribbean. Joining me are distinguished panelists with vast operational and strategic experience related to resilient food systems. And we have Ms. Caitlin Carew, the Executive Director for Helen's Daughters. Over to you, Caitlin.
Good morning, everyone, and good day, Alex. Thank you so much for having me. As Alex mentioned, my name is Caitlin Carew Afrifa. I'm the Executive Director of Helen's Daughters, which is a nonprofit organization based in St. Lucia, but working across the Caribbean to empower women in agriculture. Because this topic really is close to heart for me, and I love the theme, harvesting resilience. Because over the past 8 years, we've trained thousands of women in agriculture through our Ag Academy. We actually just launched the 6th cohort this Tuesday to about 206 participants. And that program blends components such as sustainable agriculture with financial literacy and agribusiness training. We've also launched a number of programs from our ambassador program, our Life Academy, and so forth, because we believe that treating farmers, and not just women farmers, but farmers in general, and developing them needs to be more of a holistic approach. Now, I know that most persons here, when you talk about agriculture and especially the challenges, you will talk about issues with access to land and finance, which of course it remains a barrier. But I actually wanted to take a slightly different approach, because for us, one of the biggest gaps I would say is actually the absence of mentorship and community support models in the Caribbean. That's why earlier this year we created and we hosted our unconference on agriculture. It was in August, and it's now become a biennial space that brings together farmers, policymakers, and the private sector to share grassroots solutions across Caribbean countries. So my perspective today is about how women and youth who, given mentorship and most importantly, community, can truly transform agriculture in the Caribbean. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Ms. Caitlin, for those introductory remarks. Our second panelist is Ms. Denise Marillo, Senior Project Officer in the Agricultural and Agro-Industrial Development Unit at the Caribbean Community Secretariat. Over to you, Denise.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Alex. Following Caitlin and introducing well, at the CARICOM Secretariat, we have been working a lot with youth, women, and agriculture sector stakeholders. We've had the 25 by 2025 launch initiative for the development of the sector in securing food security, ensuring food security for its population. Based on the food insecurity experience within the region, we've seen about 25, almost 26% of the region in moderately or severely food insecure, and 6.5% is severely food insecure. This raised this is very alarming and raise greater energy in pushing forward the reduction of the food import bill that we currently have as a region. The region is highly dependent on imports of basic everyday food items such as wheat, fresh produce, dairy, meats, animal feed, and a range of processed food. The region's annual food import bill is estimated at $6 billion US dollars, and an estimated 3.7 million people are food insecure. Raising food prices and increasing inflation continues to negatively affect the food security status of the region. So, but while we talk about this status, what are we doing? Because of all the external factors that may affect the availability of food and the accessibility of food, the 25 by 25 actually speaks to improve the access to the food. The approval of the formulation and design plan will allow for, was it envisioned to allow to expand the stakeholder base, to include and attract new capital and increased funding, to support and adopt the regional pre-clearance mechanism, which is a tool that is going to help with ensuring the trading is done faster to facilitate trade within the region, and which will then increase access to more food, more affordable food. The expanding of the mandate currently of the Special Ministerial Task Force, which is to allow, which is the basic forum in which the implementation of this vision to reduce food import bill by 25% is carried out. So what has been accomplished today and what notable developments that we have seen is that we have new cold storage facilities, dairy herd expansion. There are more investments. Well, not only in dairy and soy and other products, in corn as well. The rehabilitation of soil laboratories and solar drying facilities, new hatcheries in member states, expansion of beef and small ruminant sectors, digital cooperation between member states such as Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana on coconut development. We've seen also more investment being put into milk and dairy facilities. The importance of removal of technical barriers to inter-regional trade is very key. And that is part of the special ministerial task force that has been developed that they have been looking at in ensuring that we have the removal of non-tariff barriers and ensuring that improving transportation and investment and the digitization of the region's agriculture sector. Overall, also improving trade and private sector investment and involvement in sector. So this is basically an outline of the work that has been done. And I know we have a session where we could go dig deeper into these areas. So I thank you for your time and I pass it over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Ms. Denise, for those introductory remarks, highlighting some of the interventions that are ongoing within the CARICOM Secretariat to address some of the challenges. And our final panelist is Dr. Roberto from the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. Over to you, Roberto.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I would just, I just heard carefully to the two previous speakers, and I want to express that I fully agree with their visions, and perhaps I would round these perspectives of the barriers by classifying in three groups, maybe. which was already mentioned. One is the high independence. So and this is really an issue that is seen in all English Caribbean countries. Some others more, some others less. Antigua and Barbuda, for example, Barbados, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent also. They are very, very highly dependent countries on imports of food. There are other countries less dependent, but still they import substantial amounts of food, like Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica as well. So and this is expressed, is seen this in the supermarkets when or local markets. When you go, indeed, most of the fruit, vegetables, dairy production, it's comes from Florida or comes from Colombia, Costa Rica. Some lots of the dairy come from England, New Zealand as well, and it's a mix. Really, we're talking about of a food dependency of 80%. So when this is of course impact on prices and affordability of food. The other issue is climate and environmental risks. So Caribbean is known for the hurricanes, water stress, drought sometimes, which all undermine really domestic agricultural production. It's a challenge, this climate related. And another barrier that I see is that in the Caribbean countries, the amount of arable land is limited. There's a very high production cost when for farmers to bring inputs, fertilizers, seeds, pesticides, herbicides, machinery from any part of the world. It's expensive in this part because the populations are small, and there's no economies of scale to bring large quantities because there's no large quantity of farmers who can buy those. So doing farming is here. It's expensive. That brings an issue associated to limited amounts of food production, which is linked to the first point of high import dependence, and that makes it somehow that the value chains are weak, and another issue because the number of farmers are not many. In fact, the contribution of agricultural GDP to total GDP in most countries is less than 5%, or some countries like St. Vincent can go to 15%, but it's very, and that reflects that the number of farmers are not many, and the financing for farming it's an issue. So in this context, it is really a challenge to see how to increase trade, because I'm telling you now, there is not much production internally, and that's why there's high imports. So whenever we talk about expanding trade, okay, we could do several things like many institutions have been doing, and in fact we do have here a trade agreement internal for CARICOM countries where import tariffs among intra is zero. But there is a challenge of having enough production to exchange among countries. There have been several efforts to for example, to aggregate supply in order to send more supply across countries, or to build kind of regional food reserves in order to react when there are, for example, early warning systems or shortages in some countries. There has been efforts to facilitate cross-border circulation of fresh products and staples, but the number of ships, for example, connecting from one island to another island, there are few, in some cases none. For example, some trade of chicken, for example, requires refrigeration, and that kind of shipment is not available. So there are some challenges, and we are doing some work on that maybe I can share in the next round. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roberto, for those introductory remarks. And it seems the panelists are in agreement in terms of some of the challenges And as we move to the next round of questions, where I'm going to pose questions to each of the panelists, I think it's clear that an increasing population, changes in dietary preferences, and a thriving tourism industry further strains the ability of local food systems to provide sufficient and healthy diets for all, including vulnerable populations. And I'll ask a question to you, Ms. Caitlin. What role do women and youth play in transforming agriculture in island contexts? Over to you, Ms. Caitlin.
Thank you so much, Alex. To be honest with you, I think that women and youth are usually at the very bottom of the rung in terms of the agricultural sector, and that's proven as well. I think for the youth aspect, we have to look at it not just in the Caribbean, but globally, farmers and aging population. For youth in particular, there is this notion that young people are not necessarily interested in farming, and I don't agree with that. I think that the way that we've packaged agriculture as an enterprise is not modern, it's not young, and it's not sexy. And as a result, young persons are just not interested in it. So you're not seeing that transition from the aging population to young persons. For women, it's also, they face similar issues to accessing or perhaps becoming more successful within the agricultural sector, I would say. But we have to look at them not just as sort of tokens that we need to provide just assistance to, but true transformers of the sector. Because what I will say is, in the aspect of women, when we look at agriculture in the Caribbean, I'll use St. Lucia, for example, we had a culture of monoculturism during our banana days, whereas women were the primary ones who diversified the agricultural sector. And what you saw in terms of markets, farmers markets, and so forth, is that diversification on display. So while sometimes most male farmers or large-scale farmers focused on one crop, which we're reeling from the effects of monoculturism now, women continue that tradition of diversity. And they've also been pioneers of driving agro-processed goods. So while there are a number of barriers and you don't see a number of our women's products or youth products on supermarket shelves and other retail sections, the thing is that our people have been sort of innovators in, for example, similar products that you would see on Trader Joe's or the shelves in Europe and the US. The other thing I would say with regards to women, and then I'll go into youth, is that women, you look at agriculture from a very holistic level as well. We've noticed that women farm even according to their family's needs, but not just their nutritional needs, but their health needs. Considering that the Caribbean region deals with high incidences of non-communicable diseases, you'll see women who are farming because maybe this person has an illness. You'll see the trends of medicinal gardens, which is part of, in some communities, it's part of our indigenous and maroon heritages as well. And also now you're starting to see women combine agriculture and tourism. With youth in particular, they're all about digital skills and climate smart creativity as well. They're all about looking at protected structures and so forth. But as a result, we need access to finance, you need mentorship, you need a supportive environment, essentially. So again, what I just want to say is that we need to not look at women and youth sort of like the last rung, but really look at them as true transformers of the sector. Thank you.
And I would like to also agree. Women and youth are central to transformation in our region. And if we fail to really engage them, we really are risking stalling the momentum of the region's initiative for the 25 by 2025, where we reduce the food import bill for our region. We see women play really critical roles, as Caitlin mentioned, and that's in agro-processing, retail, household food security, as she mentioned. So, yeah, supporting them with training, land tenure, financing would multiply these impacts. And she brought up a very important point as well, the need for mentorship. We take note of that. Also, youth. what can we do without them? They're, like you said, next generation. They bring the innovation to the table. We see them leading in hydroponics, e-commerce, and even digital agriculture startups. The region currently has a youth-led agriculture youth strategy. It wasn't developed by anyone else other than the youth. So for us, we saw that it was very important that they lead that strategy. And today there is a movement towards implementation of that strategy that would empower youth and their involvement in the sector. So I commend and I support Caitlin in her views there. And I must attest that the work plan that we are currently in rolling out will be investing in youth entrepreneurship programs and will support school-based agriculture initiatives to inspire the next generation of agri-entrepreneurs. That's part of the work plan that we have here at the Secretariat. And that is as we roll out the vision of the region. As we are only custodian, it's the actual membership who would make these decisions and who has who gives us the mandate as we move forward in this in taking up take moving forward youth and women in this sector.
Thank you so much, Ms. Caitlin and Ms. Denise. Moving to you, Ms. Denise. How can regional trade be leveraged to improve food security and strengthen equitable food systems? Over to you, Ms. Denise.
All right, thanks, Alex. Regional trade is one of our greatest tools for resilience, and I believe one of the presenters in the introduction, that is, they pointed out. Sorry, no, it was one of the panel here who did point out the importance of having trade as a key tool for resilience and to unlock its potential in ensuring that there is accessibility to food, affordability of food, giving rising in prices and inflation, right? So what some of the challenges we've been faced with, or we're trying to, is to harmonize the SPS measures within our region. So while the region does have among ourselves zero tariffs among ourselves, we do have a common external tariff which is applied. But how can we then ensure that the non-tariff measures or the technical barriers do not hinder trade, right? So there's this foreseeing of harmonizing these SPS measures. So we have our regional institution, CAFSA, who is advancing in this work to reducing duplication and delays in and maintaining biosecurity at the same time. Also, inter-island shipping logistics. We've seen investments in the regional ferry system that's led by the private sector. And the cold chain transportation we're seeing will cut costs and losses. So again, impacting the affordability of food and the price of the food in our region. We're also looking at e-marketing system, right? Under CARICOM's work plan is to develop a regional e-marketing platform, and we're at the stage of rolling it out in member states once approval is given. That will allow farmers to connect farmers, processors, and buyers to connect in a marketplace. And this digital system we're foreseeing would reduce transaction costs, improve price transparency, and makes regional trade more efficient and enhance competitiveness within the regional agriculture sector. Another point, the value chain development. We're seeing linkaging taking place between member states from the largest scale producers and processors with the smaller processing hubs in other islands. And that is envisioned to create regional supply chains and strengthen them and make them more competitive and resilient. So these are some of the ways that we've seen the region is moving forward in ensuring there's more regional trade and being able to be resilient and be able to strengthen our food system.
If I can just also add, Alex, and this is where I think I will put a little pressure on CARICOM and even FAO, is that these policies are amazing, but I think also the point on community also goes to sort of like our diplomatic community as well. To this day, I think we need to highlight the fact that it is easier to trade sometimes with the US and Europe than with our own Caribbean brothers and sisters. I also want to highlight the point that we compete amongst one another rather than deciding to trade or even strengthen our own corporations. And again, I think our history of colonization does add to that fact that the Caribbean can be a bit more of a complex place when it comes to regional trade as a result of our colonial past. So I think, again, this is where the diplomatic community does come in, because I think there's obviously an appetite within the agricultural sector to boost regional trade. But from my reality in the grassroots, we're just not there yet. It's much easier to access other territories.
May I just add as well, note taken, Caitlin. Also that currently there is a pre-clearance mechanism that is also in the pipeline, which seeks to have a set of protocols that would allow for food safety and ensuring SPS measures are met, but that it be done at the exporting level, that there's that pre-clearance seal that would facilitate a speeder flow of trade. So there are some movements towards us having that type of mechanism to ensure that we do have a faster, because we've seen that SPS challenges is one of the main hindrance in why we are not trading among ourselves. So it's envision that that mechanism would then support member states to have certain protocols already established, would have institutions in place that would allow these pre-clearance, such as pre-clearance facility and procedures in place, so that we can indeed have a system that makes it more seamless and streamless for trading to happen. So so that's another thing to just point out here, what the region has been looking at in ensuring that we facilitate trade and overcome the SPS challenges that we've been having and have put on, because we have so many different requirements. We need to harmonize it, as I mentioned earlier, and with that, we're hoping that that would have more streamlining, cost effective. It would allow for, reduction in cost for trade.
Thank you so much, Ms. Caitlin and Ms. Dennis. And I move to you, Dr. Roberto. The question is, how can data and technology be used to optimize supply chains and inform food policies that contributes towards strengthening the resilience of food systems? Over to you, Dr. Roberto.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, of course, data and technology can be used to close information gaps. For example, there are several efforts in the Caribbean. For example, our colleagues from World Food Program, in collaboration with CARICOM, they are working towards a tool that is called the Food Security Dashboard. And FAO, that dashboard uses FAO, which is the Food Insecurity Experience Scale, which is an indicator of food insecurity in the region. And it was, as it was mentioned, I think at the beginning of this session, the about 42% is estimated. I think our colleague said something more than 3.7 million, something like that, 3.2 million, something like that, which is almost half of the population of the Caribbean having experiencing some more critical level of food insecurity and some less level of food insecurity. Of course, this is shocking indeed. And this had such a large number. But I think what these tools like data, I think they are good for closing gap. But there are a deeper issue that I want to touch upon, which is the associated to the cost of the healthy diet. And let me put it in a very simple terms. If you are a family here in these countries, and it's documented, the cost of healthy diet, I mean the cost of eating food groups that contribute with good nutrients like dairy, meats, fruits and vegetables, is the highest in the world, and it's estimated at 5.8 US dollars per person per day, whereas the world average is less than it's about $3.9. So in some countries like Guyana, for example, is calculated to be the highest, and there are other countries, but in general, in the Caribbean is the highest. And this is well documented by FAO, World Food Program, and other. So this brings to one issue, and we say why? Why? I think, well, there are some measures that can help, like harmonizing the sanitary and phytosanitary measures. I agree with that, but this is not really the main problem I believe here. I think the is why is food expensive? That is the key, and we need to understand when you go to a supermarket and you have a family of 5 people and you want to buy healthy products, not the products that are saturated in salt, sugars, fats, and all that. No, healthy. Then it comes to question, and there's another very very worrying indicator in the Caribbean that is overweight, which is because we are eating here, we are moving towards cheaper foods because we can afford healthy foods. And in this history of asking ourselves why food is expensive, we have to ask. Already we know through this conversation, our colleague said, well, we are highly dependent on food imports. So that means that most of our food that we eat here in the Caribbean come from non-Caribbean or outside the Caribbean region. And in those some cases it can be 80%, some cases less than that, 70%. Okay. The conclusion is that we are net food importers. And when this food comes into the region, it comes in containers. It comes by boat, by ship, and they have to pay import tariffs at the border. And there are additional charges there. There's VAT. There's other things. The importers, what they do is of course, they clear, or they do all the customs clearances. They pay, but at the end of the day, they do not absorb the import charges and all those costs. Those are transferred to the end consumers, and that's why the institutions, and when that price reaches the supermarkets and local markets, then we can say, okay, the Caribbean has the highest cost of healthy diets in the world. So what we do, then we need to understand what makes the structure, the construction of the price. And one is transportation, of course. One is insurance, of course. What is the margins that supermarkets put? But another segment is the tariffs. There's another section that corresponds to non-tariff barriers, which are related to anything that is not related to the tariff. And then when we check the tariffs in the Caribbean, they can be in average 40%. As my colleague mentioned, there is a common external tariff that is internally, tariff is 0. But we've seen that intra-trade is small because there's not much production. So most of the food that is imported pays that tariffs. I think it would be needed to understand, to see to what extent is possible to consider or to analyze at least a reduction of those import tariffs. Because if we are saying here that food insecurity is very high, okay, one concrete solution to reduce food insecurity is to reduce prices. right? And to do that, one element of prices is tariffs. So, and what is of course, that has an impact on fiscal revenues. Governments make, but in the Caribbean, most things, for example, cars in Barbados or any other countries have very high import tariffs. What is the proportion? And that would be a question interesting to understand. What is the proportion of imports of the revenues coming from healthy products, not from import tariffs that are applied to French fries or products that are very highly on fats or sugars. No, I'm talking about tariffs to healthy products that are utilized by children, consumed by children, by the elder in hospitals, or by ordinary families in the region. What is the impact of reducing import tariffs to those healthy products, and if that reduction would mean an improvement on food security in the region and improve in accessibility, because affordability is an issue. I have a study showing that in average, just 30% of Caribbean families can afford to access to healthy foods, healthy consumption basket, in other words. So I think that's an area that has not been very much discussed here, but I think it's an area that needs to be considered if we when discussing about improving food security and reducing obesity. Over.
I don't know, Miss. Thank you, Dr. Roberto. Miss Kathleen, Miss Denise, do you have anything to add?
Yes, Alex. Just to note that part of the initiative, the 25 by 2025, it is an initiative that is promoting investments to build a supply capacity, and agreeing that we should look at having healthier options to consumers in the region. And part of that is to empower our region suppliers to be able to produce those healthy options, because their potential, they have been expressed, and over the 5 years experience, we have seen regional private sector investments in key sectors, key commodities, I mean, key agriculture commodities that that is very encouraging, although it's not being able to supply the full region, but it is a step forward to gaining some level of sovereignty over the food that we eat. And I agree that we mustn't look towards healthier options for a region. And the only way we can do that is if we can produce those healthy food.
Alex, if I could just add, Roberto, I'm so glad that you brought this up, because I think that we speak about agriculture almost in a silo. And when I look at agriculture, someone mentioned in the chat, how do we tie agriculture to food security, food sovereignty, and so forth, or health? And I feel like agriculture intersects with so many areas. But I also look at the Caribbean and its strategy to agriculture as more geared towards export rather than import substitution. And the fact that I think our tunnel vision has become sort of like export and so forth, and there's a lack of strategy on import substitution, we also don't look at the intersections of agriculture and health. So according to Sir Hilary Beckles, 1 in every 3 Black Caribbean families suffers from either hypertension or diabetes. And I will remember quite vividly when the pandemic hit and ships of food and so forth could not come to our shores. Where were persons turning to? The farmers and to their markets. They were crowding those spaces. But when we look at the infrastructure of our markets, our local markets and so forth, there's no investment, there's no care from our leaders. And so we really have to analyze the strategies that we're taking, because sometimes it almost feels like we're almost more concerned about what others are eating, and like sort of like taking our agriculture from our shores, rather than the concerns of our own actual local diets. And someone mentioned as well in the chat the changing diets and so forth. These policies, these strategies would almost start to retool our brains in terms of how we eat. Someone also mentioned the fact of seasonality. My grandparents, their diets were based on seasonal products. Now that the fact that we have access to literally everything, our diets have completely changed, and not to necessarily our betterment. So I think again, like we need to really look at agriculture more through the lens of intersections, particularly with our region. But Roberto, good points on the fact that obviously our rising costs, we need to look at how we can, the investment in our own local producers versus these policies and the food that's coming in, and also the amount of money that is placed on our consumers to actually access food from the global level that's not necessarily good for them.
And that's an insightful discussion. And yeah, just to sum it up a bit, I think based on what is being discussed, looking at the challenges within the Caribbean context, where the region is prone to climate shocks, which affect the ability to produce food, agricultural, looking at terrestrial and marine value chains. And based on this, I think a multi-scalar approach is required, using a multi-stakeholder engagement, starting at the micro level with the local producers, looking at sustainable practices, promoting diversification of crops, which translate to diversification of livelihoods, and looking at how do we strengthen the base, which is at grassroots level in communities, promoting climate smart agriculture, looking at practices that do not degrade our environment, promoting our marine resources through rehabilitation and maintaining coral reefs, mangroves, then also looking at crop production practices that maintain soil health, promoting diversification. And you also mentioned the importance of local crops that are tolerant to existing climate within the Caribbean context. Then also the importance of having those aggregation systems at micro level, linking the producers to markets within a country where there is need to invest in infrastructure, be it cold storage solutions, and also looking at it within one particular country, then also promoting intra-regional trade. So it's an issue of trying to optimize local production and see how can the region as a whole optimize intra-regional trade, addressing some of the inefficiencies that have been highlighted. Then also looking at it at a macro level, I think policy plays an important part, policies and regulations that seeks to optimize local production and also promoting intra-regional trade. I don't know, panelists, if you have anything to add before we try and look in the chat box. Over to you.
Yeah, if I might just say quickly one comment. I think food security is not only about local production. That is, a country can be food secure with the help of trade. In fact, here in the Caribbean, and we are the best proof of that. We have food security for more than 50% of the population thanks to trade. If there's no trade, we basically die here. So countries can have food security through two means. The concept of food security is supply and demand. Supply when you produce and you can sell, and demand when you sell your labor, you earn a salary, or you have a property, you rent it, or you have the government who provides you with a subsidy, or is a combination of the three or more options that give you entitlements, give you livelihoods. So you can have food security from both aspects. So I think this is just to mention that it is good to improve local production, but exporting cash crops, specializing on products that can provide high levels of income is not bad idea. Many countries do. Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and some other countries in Africa, they specialize in whatever they have a market niche, and they sell that and they get revenues. And if in cases of issues like hurricanes or man-made issues, there are always the possibility of food stocks that will guarantee the food consumption of a country for at least 1 year. So this just to emphasize on that, we don't need to produce everything that we eat here. We don't have to. We don't have the land. We don't have the enough water, and we don't have enough farmers to do that. We have to focus. We have to prioritize on what we are good, because private sector, they don't invest very much on agriculture. I mean, banks coming here, I haven't seen banks. Perhaps some small examples, but it's not because agriculture is very risky, and it's safer to invest on services or industry that doesn't depend on the weather. So it is very difficult to attract private sector investments. So we have to, and farmers are driven by market science. What is more expensive, what is more costly, that's what they will produce. So my suggestion is focusing on what each country is able. Tashin, nutmeg, mangoes. Caribbean countries are good for many things, but focusing is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. I think, yeah, you are reiterating the point of optimizing the resources that we have, and also looking at optimizing how the region does trade as a whole, in terms of either through promoting intra-regional trade and also diversifying global import sources. And I don't know, Miss Caitlin, maybe I can, if you have anything to say before I jump into the chat box, where there is a question on import 25 by 2025. I don't know, Miss Denise, there's a question here from Wilson saying there's a drive to reduce food imports by 25% by 2025. Has the reduction been defined, for example? I don't know if the question is complete. Maybe if you could, yeah, just try to answer the question, because I think we are also running out of time. Over to you, Miss Dennis.
Sorry, Alex. Just to get the gist of the question, can you just repeat for me, please?
You're muted, Alex.
They just want to find out, has the reduction been defined, and maybe if you could try to give an example in terms of what are the achievements so far, and how we intend to achieve this target by 2030, given that I think it was extended by 5 more years. Over to you.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Alex. Leaving from the point that Roberto has left, that it's a strategy, that region must be strategic, and that is what the 25 by 2025 initiative sought to do. So member states would indicate their products that they're producing, that they see the capacity to produce. So it's on that basis, then the parameters are set in terms of achieving the 25 reduction. So on hand, I do not have any figures per se, but there have been investments that we have seen by member states, like in Guyana, especially particularly an example, I should say, I retract, particularly in their grains sector, in corn and in soya. So it has allowed member states to have a more focused drive in upscaling their production, increasing their production in those commodity which they see as priority or as crops that support their needs, the food security of their individual country, but collectively we will see a reduction of the import bill. So I don't have any particular figures, but I do know that there are some figures about growth in the sector. So there's like 11.9% growth for Guyana in all subsectors, and there's 17% growth in agriculture sector in Jamaica. That's what has been reported in 2022. I mentioned investments and infrastructure. We've seen increased infrastructure investment and expenditure in Guyana, St. Lucia, Barbados, Jamaica, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Montserrat. Increased in budgetary allocation for agriculture across all member states. There've been a $2 million US dollars tuna expansion project in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I mentioned the soybean production in Guyana, which expanded by 1,000 acres. We've seen improvement of lab facilities in Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, and St. Lucia. The introduction of high-tech production in Trinidad, increased training and capacity. There are there are other collaborations such as the Black Belly project between member states, between Guyana and Barbados, the involvement of the private sector, through there's the Caribbean Private Sector Organization, the export of soybean meal to Trinidad and Tobago from Belize, which wasn't there, which we saw um, um, experienced. Advancement of the regional food terminal between Guyana and Barbados and Suriname. Increase in cross-border investments, training and technical assistance, Barbados, Belize, Guyana, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago, development of new industries, and stakeholder buy-in and support. So these are some of the positive developments that we have seen up to today. And we are envisioning that with the expansion and extension of 5 years, that this will continue, and that we will see more gains.
Thank you so much, Miss Dennis. And as they say, good things come to an end, and it has been an insightful discussion where I think, in summary, these challenges require a multi-stakeholder approach at different levels. And also, it's good to note that efforts are being made. I think ground is being gained in terms of having that multi-stakeholder engagement. And it's through forums like this whereby ideas are exchanged to see what are the current gaps, how can they be addressed, and also looking at some of the achievements that have been made. And thank you so much, Dr. Roberto, Miss Caitlin, and Miss Denise for being part of this panel discussion. And I would like to thank Island Innovation for hosting this summit, and looking forward to seeing you next year. Thank you, and over to you, Christian.
Thank you so much, Alex, Roberto, Caitlin, and Denise, for your participation today on this fantastic session. A lot of positive comments in the chat from different regions of the globe. Now, I would like to invite everyone to join us next year for the Global Sustainable Island Summits 2026. After this year's experience in St. Kitts and Nevis and last year's experience in Prince Edward Island and the previous year in Madeira, we are coming back to Europe, this time in the Micronesian region, with our event. We are partnering with the Cabildo of Gran Canaria to host it, and you should take a look at the chat for the special discount code for the early bird tickets. Please note that this is available only for attendees for the Virtual Island Summit. Also, don't miss the opportunity to enroll in the new Island Innovation course, Sustainable Island course, Strategies, Finance, and Leadership for Innovation. take a look at the link in the chat for more information. Our last session of the summit is coming up exactly in 2 hours, and it will be the Island Solutions Showcase and closing session. Don't miss it because we have many interesting solutions for islands representing all regions of the globe in this panel. So I invite you everyone to just take a look at our website. We have the links available there. Thank you everyone, and see you at the next